And I want to know, Mike Bowie's already said, it's Trump. Who do you think has the best content? Who has the best character? Matter of fact, let's forget about their character. Because people would say, well, Mike, do I want to have a beer with him? Oh, wait a minute, we got a call. Hello, and thank you for calling into No Soundbites Allowed. This is your host, Michael Voss. And may I ask, what's your first name?
Jason.
Hey, Jason. So what's going on?
Well, you're talking about, DeSantis's, him throwing his hat into the ring. Mm-hmm. Figured I'd chime in and give some of my opinions on this Republican primary that's going down, and kind of the way I see some of the issues being, presented in the way that, I kind of feel how it's going so far. I suppose like the first thing I would look at is that, I believe that DeSantis, it's a DeSantis and Trump, primary in my opinion. And it's interesting right now to see the approach and the attacks that Trump has been using against DeSantis, so far, and he's coming, at DeSantis from the left. And this was one thing that actually drove me nuts, during 2016. And I think a lot of, maybe, a lot of Republicans have forgot, but he did the same, sort of attacks, from the left on Republicans then as well too. And I remember, with Ted Cruz especially, and it was one of those things where I remember at the time saying multiple times, I said, Trump, he has no track record. And there's no guarantee that half the things he says he's going to do, because he was on both sides of the argument all the time. One of the things that did happen, though, is that given the way things, turned out, I felt that he actually did a far more conservative, or he ran a far more conservative presidency than actually I had, anticipated from the way that he actually ran his primary, like I said, in 2016. So, but the thing is here we are again, just some of the attacks that he is and positions he's taking against DeSantis. And then, even to the point where he's now defending, Governor Cuomo, saying that he actually did a better job than DeSantis when it came to, saving people's, lives during COVID, or not killing people during COVID. And it's just, obviously being from New York State and then dealing with Cuomo directly and what he had done, for Trump to even, remotely, put himself in a position where he appears in any form or way, defend that position is just, it gets under your skin. And there's other, things as well too. I mean, when it came to the positions, with Disney, being able to, do what they want, and take positions, specifically against, the people of Florida, while getting tax breaks. And then, Trump's, taking position, I think it was his son too, was taking a position with the Bud Light thing, saying, just, get over it. It's like, we don't want to boycott this. There's just, like I said, there's been, so far, it really seems like the position here is that, Trump is taking not the conservative part. He wants more of a moderate, push, in this primary to get himself, elected.
Okay, so let me see if I understand. Are you saying that you think Trump has the best content, the best plan for 2024 because he's taking a more moderate stance? Am I understanding that? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that what his position for the primary seems to be, he believes that I think that he can win. He believes that he can win the primary by actually hitting, DeSantis from the left. And that is, one of those things where, as far as being conservative, to watch him do that, it drives you nuts. But then again, if you want to look at an overall plan, he That's another problem too. Is that unfortunately Trump is so caught up in talking about the 2020 election and how he it was stolen from him, and how many of these problems are, and yet there, and then he says that the system is identical to what it was in 2020. And the thing is that if you're already saying that it's set up against you and there's no way to win or beat the system, again, it puts in question exactly how you are going to inspire people to get out to the polls. Because one of the things that we found with Georgia is that the rhetoric that he used and his position that he took pretty much gave away, in my opinion, the Senate seats that should have been a win, because at that point Republicans just felt disillusioned about the vote, and they didn't think their vote mattered, and so they just didn't show up at all. And again, that cost us the Senate. So again, we got a lot of different positions that Trump has taken, and what his focus has been, that is not going to help move us forward. So, but again, like I said, he did the same thing, a lot of the same thing in 2016. I just couldn't stand a lot of his stuff. I'm like, oh my God. And eventually, he did put certain people in positions, which again did, good things, during
But
his presidency.
let's think about this. We know that Trump has been effective even when he had a Congress that was diametrically opposed to him. We know that Tim Scott is a good senator. He's been very effective in his role as a senator. We know that Ron DeSantis has been effective as a governor. We know that they are effective. But which one do you believe? And those are those three. And then there's, of course, Nikki Haley has been effective in her time. Vivek Ramaswamy is a bit of an unknown. He's out of left field. But looking at those four individuals in particular, since they have histories and they've all been effective, which one gives you the confidence and says, this is the most effective person going forward, in your opinion, at this moment?
Effective, being able to execute the plan, that they have, coming forward. I mean, honestly, yeah. I think that DeSantis is, is in a better position to do so. And part of my bias towards him is simply that some of the things that he did in Florida, to gain control, of the bureaucracies in his state, in that state, and if he was to implement the same, way of handling those bureaucracies in the state, towards, the federal government, I think that he could really clean up things far more effectively than what Trump did. I mean, unfortunately, what generally, in my opinion, happened is it just seemed that Trump ended up complaining about a lot of the issues, and then at certain points just didn't, wasn't able to execute, certain things. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's a lot that was going against him, when it came to the federal government completely, when it came to the FBI, and then even the, even other Republicans, were against, him as well too, when it came to the Russian collusion and, all the other, crap that we now find that was, complete, conspiracy theory. I mean, it wasn't conspiracy. I mean, it was an actual conspiracy, by the former administration to frame, the president. And then it's exactly what it was. But that being said, though, even with those limitations and those things, against him, I think that, again, it's about, the style and his ability to get the job done when put under those circumstances. And I just don't think that, I think he is so focused on the past that he's not going to, do what's necessary to fix, things for the future. And not to mention the fact too, is that I don't believe he effectively can accomplish what he needs to within one term, where DeSantis, he will at least have the opportunity to totally revamp, the government if given, a full 8 years, where Trump will not be, given that opportunity. And for so many people that actually believe that, Trump should get it and then DeSantis should follow him, I don't believe, politically that's even possible. And generally history, shows that, that will not be the case.
Well,
I mean,
that's not exactly correct. I mean, lately, going back to Reagan, we've seen that most presidents have not been one-term presidents; they've been two-term presidents consistently. That's been the consistent trend since Reagan. The exception being George and also George H. Bush,
yeah, that was.
and for
I mean,
Trump.
that's questionable though because of Perot. What happened with that circumstance there. So
But whichever the reason, but we know that that has been consistent. Every other president in that time frame since 1980 have been two-term presidents. So although Trump would be very old, and he would easily be the oldest president if he were to go for a second term in 2028 and win that, that would be unique. But he would have that opportunity. Now, again, in saying, if I'm understanding you right, in saying that DeSantis would be more capable of getting his objectives achieved, that's assuming that he has a Congress that'll work with him. Do you think that, and we already saw that Trump was able to largely, even with a Congress that was against him, including Republicans that were against him, he still got most of his agenda done. Do you think that DeSantis or Nikki Haley or Tim Scott or Vivek Ramaswamy is more of a wild card, but let's say Trump, DeSantis, Nikki Haley, or Tim Scott, they've all worked with Congress. Wouldn't they be just as effective? Or do you think what's different about DeSantis and being more effective than any of the other four?
well, the thing is that honestly, I really hate to tell you, I really don't even want to waste the bandwidth on the other candidates because I just don't feel that they have anything at this point that they've put forward that really needs much recognition. Like I said, I think it's a race between Trump and DeSantis. The other candidates, I mean, yeah, they have some ideas that they throw out there, but as far as being in a position of executing to a massive degree, and then having something that gets the attention, on a national level. I mean, even when it comes to national level issues, like the way that COVID was dealt with, there's going to be shown a massive contrast to the way that actual DeSantis, handled things versus Trump. I mean, Trump was knocking on DeSantis, for, being fully opened and doing different things and to allowing, their government to be open. And again, that's one of the reasons why Trump now is attacking him from the left, saying that freaking Governor Cuomo was the greatest governor on the planet. And, he saved millions of lives, and it's like, I mean, that's a game that he's going to be playing during this primary. And it's just like, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I think it's a joke. And again, like I said, he did this. I mean, this is not a surprise though. Trump did the exact same things in the other primary. I did not like Trump in the last primary, and his positions were extremely. A lot of attacks were from the left that he took on the other candidates, especially Ted Cruz, because Ted Cruz was coming from the right, and so Trump was hitting him from the left. And again, when it came down to it, I was thinking, oh my God, if Trump gets in there, he's gonna run the government the identical way that that Hillary Clinton did, and guess what? I was actually proven wrong in that circumstance, But again, I mean, there's more on the table now, in this election than there was before. And the thing is that now, then it comes to his electability. I think that Trump definitely has a way of getting the left out to the polls to vote against him far greater than what it would appear DeSantis would do, and that was only kind of proven to exactly the way that DeSantis has proven that he was able in this last election to actually get out the vote and to come out there with certain ideas that actually people were united around. I mean,
Well,
you don't. So
well, I would just want to bring up, according to, and this is from Real Clear Politics, one of the few actually independent and neutral sites in the internet right now, and looking at the aggregate, looking at all of the recent polling. Right now, there are 11 candidates that are looking for the Republican nomination. The ones that really are of any interest, that have any real numbers here, are Trump, DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, which nobody's talking about, so I don't think he's even a factor.
Right.
Vivek Ramaswamy, who is just the new kid, so he's the new flavor. You've got Tim Scott, who's a senator. There's Youngkin Sununu, Larry Elder, who I think is kind of more. Larry Elder is the shock. He's the far outside. He's way out. But I like Larry Elder. I think he's an impressive man, but he's just out there for.
Yeah, he's an interesting character.
Yeah, but I think he's there for just the attention and maybe some of the issues that he believes in. And Hutchison. So Sununu, that is not he's going nowhere. Youngkin, also going nowhere. Chris Christie, dead in the water. No one cares about him. Larry Elder, again, like I said, he has a spin. Vivek Ramaswamy is obviously very popular. So right now, as you said, the real race is Trump and DeSantis. Trump is winning by 30 points. He's got 53% approval, or leading in the polls, versus DeSantis, who's at 22.4. And Trump has 53.2. So there's a almost 31 point lead for Trump. It sounds like you accept Trump, but you prefer DeSantis. Is that accurate?
Yeah, look, it comes down to what it is. I've elect Trump, over Biden any day, and that's not even the issue. My main point is that about electability of the candidate going forth, to out of the primaries and then into the actual general election, and then it's actually about executing a plan, and not just executing a plan for 4 years, but actually having a plan that'll be implemented for the full 8 years that I believe that would come down the pipe. And again, I just don't. Look, there's a lot at stake now. There's a lot of downside for Trump, when you actually analyze the major situation. We talk about Biden as well too all the time of being old, and I hate to hold that against Trump, but reality's got it. Huh?
It's a factor. There's realistically, they are very old. That is a real factor. Yeah.
And it's just like, look at, I know he's, I don't know, he's probably on some sort of, pep pill of some sort that keeps him going every day, but it's like, I don't know how much you can, keep yourself that wired on whatever you're wired on, to perform at that level. And again, it's just not that I'm saying that it's not possible. You could, do it forever, but again, look at, I'm looking beyond just 4 years, looking for, complete 8. And again, if you did want to, specify, directly on policy and execution of policy, and
how about this? What if Trump comes out and says, "I'm only going to run for 4 years"? Does that change the way you would vote?
Wait, if who says what?
If Trump says that he's only going to run for 4 years, he's going to run for one term because age, does that change your vote?
What do you mean? He can only run for one term.
No, he can't. He can run for 2.
No, he can't.
Sure, he can.
No, you can't. You can only have a total of 8 years.
No, that's consecutive. You can run again.
No, total 8 total. You can have if you get in power, like if you're a vice president and you
that's consecutive. Years. That's consecutive term. He can run again. No. He can run for 8.
No, you can't.
Yeah, you can.
I'm 100% right on this one. You can't do twice.
Yes, you can.
You can't run for 8 years now.
Yeah, you can.
No, he can't.
Yeah.
You're gonna owe me a dozen eggs on this one. And I know for a fact that he can't run for more than 4 years. He can only have 4-year terms. That has been said by tons of commentators as well too, saying that that's one of the big downfalls of actually electing Trump at this point, is that he's only got a 4-year term. He can't run for 8 years. That's a huge problem.
Let me see here. This is under the 22nd Amendment. just for people to know. So it's 2-term limit on the presidency, and Section 1, no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice, and no person who has held the office, this is the part that's important, the office of the president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected shall be elected to the office of the president more than once. Shall not apply to a person holding the office of president when the article was proposed by Congress, and shall not prevent any person who may be holding the office of president or acting as president during the term when this article becomes operative. I stand corrected. You are correct. Jason, you're right.
Close, I'm right.
And how kicked in as well. No, it's 1 term. I stand corrected. As I had read it, and I admit, up until this moment, rereading the 22nd Amendment, I had misread it in the past, that it was twice in a consecutive term. That was my misunderstanding. Yeah. I am wrong. I don't mind admitting I was wrong, and I misread that. And that's why we brought it up. And I guarantee you, if I thought that it was consecutive terms, there are thousands of other people that believed it as well. So it's good to have this for everyone to be able to see and say, oh, no, the truth is, according to the 22nd Amendment, it's at all. If you've been elected at all, you can never be more than twice. So Trump can only get 4 years. Hey, I'm happy to say I get things wrong from time to time. It happens. I have no problem with being corrected.
I think, what's interesting, though, is just like, I think there's an office that, I know that wouldn't be a term, would be our own Bennington mayors. They can only, have, I think, so many, elected terms, two elected terms. But if they actually take a, break, and then they actually can come back, because there's nothing stipulating in the law that they can't actually run. They just can't have consecutive, elections running more than 2 terms at a time. So that would be a kind of like a different type of law that would work that way. But yeah, the presidency, the only other, like I said, I mean, if like, for example, if the president was impeached and then another person came into term, they could take part of it, and then they could run like twice, depending on the length of the initial first term that they took into. But yeah.
Hey, people learn.
But anyway, back to what we were talking about, as far as the presidential primary there. Again, like I said, I've got my, opinions, on DeSantis. Another thing too is I was listening to, I think he had a, audiobook that he came out with too, and he stated a lot of different, things about his past, his policies, and it was an interesting read. So I learned about, some of his ideas and the way that he thinks, in certain situations, and I think they're pretty strong. Now, as far as there's other things, like a lot of people are kind of going into, more of a personal aspect of just seeing the whether or not DeSantis is personable enough for the position.
I don't care about that. I don't care about that.
Yeah, and I don't either, and I don't think anybody really
that's
who's
not a
conservative.
Reason. Nobody. I don't care if you're conservative or not. You should never vote for someone because of the color of their skin, their gender, or whether or not you'd want to have a beer with them. Meaningless, absolutely meaningless to whether or not they do the job right. That's not a reason. Those are 3 things that are not reasons. And anyone who wants to say that doesn't know what they're talking about. But let's actually focus on something that is important. Did you see the launch on Twitter for DeSantis?
The what?
His launch. When DeSantis came out and said, I'm running for president, that was on Twitter.
Oh, the launch. Yeah, I mean, I know
did that
it
affect
had multiple issues.
Yeah. Did that affect your opinion?
No, not at all. I mean, I think that it's I think it was interesting because it did one of those things where it usually does to Trump, is where the left goes crazy and they attack DeSantis for his incompetence of execution on a certain thing, and you're watching them just go hilariously over. They hate Twitter. They hate the platform. Because they can't control it, and it's just everything is just driving them nuts. And again, this is one of those things where you see this hiccup and this failure, coming as from my perspective as conservative, or from that side, and seeing how he's being attacked, and it's just like it draws you more to the defense of DeSantis, if anything, and honestly Elon as well, because he's coming across as a guy who says, "I just want a platform. If you want to have your own launch, or you want to have conversations on the platform, he's more than willing to open it up."
Well, yeah, I know why Elon did it. It's publicity for him. I don't care about that. But some people have said, and I've had a conversation with a couple of people already who have told me that the fact that wasn't the only error. On the day that DeSantis announced, he had an email that went out, which is for his supporters and saying, hey, send me a check and support me going forward. And it was sent out twice. So it was a duplication error. They sent out the email once and then they sent it again. And between that and the problems with Twitter, I had some people tell me that they thought that was a problem, that he has an issue with internet, and that lowered their opinion of him because he's not internet savvy. His team isn't internet savvy, and therefore means he's not ready. Did you get that feeling?
Yeah, I think the people who are saying that are morons. Honestly, I just generally don't even take them seriously if they're truly coming at it from that angle. I mean, you've got to be so far against or for Trump in that that to have that opinion about something that is so ridiculous. I don't think it's ridiculous. Everybody already knew that DeSantis was going to launch, and then the fact that he did, it's like, okay, now you're looking for the contents and opinions and maybe what he was actually saying right then and there. Again, I mean, if you've done any sort of research on the guy or read his books, or have like the way you are, I mean, if actually people have just been listening to you, they would actually have some sort of idea what's going on and what his campaign has done, even in Florida, because you've touched on it many times during the pandemic, because of the way that he was running Florida compared to the way Cuomo was running New York, and so we were constantly using it as contrast. But again, I mean, we know more than just this launch. It's a joke. I think that I know that Trump was attacking from that angle. He's like, oh yeah.
Well, Trump's going to attack. I'm not really worried about the attacks. There are going to be plenty of attacks going back, forth, all over the place. Right. And they're going to look for holes. I'm looking at the substance. We're trying to have. Yeah. I want to focus on that. I don't think there's any
substance to the launch. Honestly, it's just a waste of time.
Well, some people found that to be of substance. So I was interested, since I had you on. Now there is a question, and now there is a question from the audience. I want you to answer. If you want, you can answer this, and then I'm going to open it up for anyone else who wants to call in. But we have a question here that isn't it. This is coming from Graham, and Graham is asking, looking at DeSantis, doesn't he have a popularity problem? Doesn't the president, the next president, whether it's 4 years or 8 years, doesn't he need the bully pulpit, the popularity of the public, to be able to get his message across and be effective? And if that's the case, isn't Trump more popular than DeSantis on those grounds? What do you think?
I kind of got part of that. You kind of broke up a little bit. So what you're saying is, as far as the ability to communicate with the public directly,
popularity, not communicate, but the popularity.
You mean just overall popularity and name wise? No, that's terrible actually for Trump, because the thing is that everybody's already baked in with Trump. Either you like him or you hate him, and the thing is that the hate him is so great that it actually ramps up the far left and the Democrats so much to get out for the polls just to vote against them. They're not voting for somebody; they just want to really vote against Trump. So yeah, as far as him communicating, I mean he'll definitely get people ramped up. But I think that the negative aspect of that will be worse. The thing is that I think though is what's going to motivate Republicans to get out to the poll or anybody to get out there should be more about, Biden and what he's been doing, to the country and the policies that he's put forth. Look, we're going to be in a pretty deep recession by the time this election comes around, and if all the focus is on Biden, then basically everybody's just, if there's not a lot of noise saying, oh, here's Trump, everybody hates him, let's just vote, against him because Orange Man bad, then everybody's going to be focused on the recession and the economy and the job losses and everything else that's going to happen. And guess what? Biden's going to lose based upon those statistics rather than, just the distraction of, Trump, everybody, hating him or, some sort of controversy that he's, does. I mean, look at, yeah, I mean, it goes both ways with Trump. Sometimes, he, hits the nail on the head, and sometimes he just,
he's a wild card. He's a wild card.
You can't predict it,
No, I understand. That's, again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but since it was a question based on what we were talking about, I thought it was a fair question to ask. But let me do this. You've answered a lot, and I'm glad to hear your opinion. I'm sure you're not the only one. I've heard the same thoughts from a lot of people.
Right.
And I've heard people who are pro-Trump, DeSantis. I've heard people who are still not sure. I've heard people switching back and forth. So I think it's a very interesting discussion. Let me open it up. Let me see. Graham said he might want to call in. Let's see what he has to say about it and see how what his side of it is. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I thank you for sharing your thoughts about it because I think it's important. Thank you for that.
Yep. Bye.
All right. So, folks, that was just Jason who called in, and I'm happy to hear his voice and hear what he had to say about whether it's DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy, DeSantis, or Trump. I think that's important, and we can see his thoughts. He's torn between them both, but I think he makes a very interesting argument about his position on it and where he's looking at it and why he's looking at DeSantis, Trump, how he's looking at them both. But maybe you have a different point of view, or maybe you have different reasons. I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. Go ahead, call on in, 607-242-9247. I'll also open this up to anyone who doesn't like any of the above. If you don't like Trump, you don't like DeSantis, you don't like Nikki Haley, you don't like Vivek Ramaswamy or Tim Scott, if you think it's someone else, or you think it's none of them, if you think it's Joe Biden, fantastic, call in. Why do you think that? I want to hear your voices. Graham, go ahead, call on in. I'm happy to hear what you have to say. Where you stand on this, whether it's Trump, DeSantis, or anyone else. I'd love to hear your opinion of that. Anyone can call in. Let's have that conversation. And maybe this is something I do for an entire show, maybe later in the week, maybe once we settle wherever I'm going to be moving to. Here we go. Hello, and thank you for calling into No Soundbites Allowed. I'm your host, Michael. Oh, can you hear me?
Hey, this is Hal Stewart. You're really quiet and breaking up, though.
I know, it's just the way the phone connects. But Hal, go ahead.
Yeah, so this there's a lot to unpack with the Republican primary this time around, to say the least. So first, you made the point that the media is looking forward to this. And above all else, you could say the media is liberal, they've got some progressive agenda, then you've got, some parts of media that are right-wing. First and foremost, the entire media has a bias towards sensationalism, and they are salivating at the prospect of these two going back and forth, without question. And there's a danger to that. Yeah, sorry, Graham. There's a danger to that, and that I think it is going to give the opportunity for a lot of stuff, a lot of maybe bills, policies, etc., to be snuck through, and that the media is going to be so hyper focused on DeSantis, Trump, that we are going to lose sight of a lot of important issues.
Well, hang on, let's address that for a second, because we've already seen that there has been a pretty discernible push in the media that's more pro DeSantis versus Trump. They hate Trump. We know that. We've seen that consistently since 2019. But we are also seeing a little bit more leniency as compared. When they're talking about Trump and DeSantis, they make it more friendly towards DeSantis than Trump when they talk about both of them. Now, obviously, when they're talking about Florida, they hate DeSantis too because of the supposed say gay bill, because of the anti-CRT critical race theory, because of the issues with Disney. But when it's a conversation about both of them, we see already they're pro-DeSantis. Do you think that will influence how this moves forward?
I don't think so. I think the only thing that's going to influence how things, if you're asking about how the media is going to cover it, the only thing that's going to influence that is the tabloid material. I mean, we are going to hear nightly about what Trump said about DeSantis and DeSantis said about Trump, and just that nonsense, the stuff that doesn't matter.
I
But
agree.
we're just going to hear, it's just that's what I fear is going to happen. Is that's what the media is going to focus on. You're going to turn on, NBC tonight, and it's going to be tonight. Trump says DeSantis' wife is ugly. DeSantis called Trump stupid.
Yeah, but didn't we see that throughout all of 2016? Didn't we see that?
It's going to be worse. I think it's going to be worse with these two, especially because I think there is a level of hatred for both of these men and not just hatred, but also likability for their supporters, that those people, the people that really hate them and really love them, are going to want to tune in to see this stuff. And look, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters for the media is eyeballs and clicks.
True.
That's it.
True.
They can sell ads. I mean, that's just how it works. And so that's going to be the approach. And of course, all that hinges on whether or not DeSantis can make this close. Because if Trump is running away with it, at some point, it's DeSantis is going to be just talking noise, and at some point, it's going to be not worth covering.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, according to the most recent Real Clear Politics poll, there's a 30-point lead, almost 31 points for Trump versus DeSantis. And it's very early. We've barely heard. I mean, we still see people coming out. But let me ask this.
Early, and if you,
go ahead.
Yeah, if you think back to 2008, the Republican primary was supposed to be a Giuliani Romney battle, and McCain ends up winning.
Right.
So that was all that talk was early in the game. So who knows what could happen? Come Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, as things tighten up, I imagine DeSantis is going to be counting on Florida, which is like the fourth or fifth primary, I believe. He's probably counting on that to be a wall to get him back into the race if he's still doing as poorly as he is now. So we'll see where things end up. But DeSantis definitely has to tighten things up, and he very well could. And who knows? I mean, you never know where another candidate could come out of the woodwork.
Well, let me ask one other question about that, because you raised a great question, like bringing up what happened with Romney and McCain and Giuliani. Do you see that happening now? Is it possible, and if it is, do you think it would be maybe a Nikki Haley, a Tim Scott? Would it be Vivek Ramaswamy, Mike Pence, or Christie? Do you think one of them would rise up, and if so, which one? Because of the stalemate or the negativity of Trump and DeSantis fighting each other? Well,
I don't think so. So I can answer. Let me give a long-winded answer to that. The short answer is probably not.
Okay.
It will probably be one of those two, and the reason is the primaries are, it's not a general, so it's going to be the bases that are going to decide this.
Right.
What I think might be possible, when you look back to 2016, Trump picked up a lot of momentum because the field was so large.
Right.
And he was able to gain a plurality of the votes and do well, and then eventually he just picked up momentum and couldn't be stopped. And if the field were smaller in the beginning, if it was just like this size, Trump may very well would have lost. We don't, that's hypothetical. I don't know that, but and so my point being is that it is possible, because I don't think the world is ready, or America is ready for Trump Biden 2. The far right and the far left they're fine. They're going to be okay with this. But what I'm talking about is the people like my wife who don't pay attention to politics. They get annoyed by all the noise and all the bickering and the back and forth, and they just she looks at Biden and she's like, she was happy enough to vote for him because she didn't like Trump, but she certainly now it's like, I don't want another 4 years. We've got to get somebody else. And certainly, I think I believe Jason, the last caller, talked on it, that Trump has the ability to bring people out to vote against him. So So with that, if somehow one of those candidates can tap into that, and DeSantis falls into that in the way that he is very focused on social issues and being this, I hate to say this, but he's got like what I've always called short man disease. They're really short guys.
I know what you mean.
Acting like a tough guy all the time.
Yeah.
Getting popping off to reporters and stuff, and always tackling he's every week he's banning something, and whether you agree with it or you don't agree, whatever it is, there's an optic there where people are like, what is this guy? This is just Trump 2.0. And so there is a possibility that one of those candidates, if they can tap into that, stay committed, be themselves, don't fall into the trap of, and that's the problem, is they can get under your skin. Trump can get under your skin. And so you look at 2016, and we had the one debate where Cruz and, the Florida senator, Marco Rubio.
Yep.
Where they decided they wanted to play Trump's game and make fun of his hand size. And I mean, here we are. We have a Republican primary for the president of the United States, and one of the candidates is making a penis joke.
Yeah, I know.
About his size. I mean, think about that. That's what Trump can get you to do, where you think you're going to be this serious guy, and all of a sudden you're on stage in a very serious moment, acting like an 8-year-old. So that's my long answer to, could somebody come out of this? Yes, if they can tap into that look. I know we're tired. I know it's been a long time since we've had a president that can string together a whole thought in one breath. We've had 6 years now. I
don't know that. I have to say, in listening to a lot of speeches by Trump, and I've covered him live at several events. So I can say, in hearing him all the way through, he does have very clear thoughts. It gets chopped up when it gets to the rest of the news media, but I've heard him speak live, and he does convey very clear thoughts. He's not a dumb man. Just to be clear on that.
He has his moments, but overall, I mean, look, he when he gets into these, sometimes he'll talk about something because he has to be smarter than everybody else, and he'll give poor information. And he'll just stick with that, even if he's wrong. We're like, just with the, how many terms he could run for. You were wrong. You just said you were wrong. If he was wrong, he wouldn't admit it. And so he just sticks on that. But at any rate, I just think that there is, when I think about people like my wife that don't follow along, they are not looking forward to a Trump-Biden rematch.
And that could be something big for the other contenders. Yeah.
And so I'll leave you this thought. So other people can call in on this topic. I was talking this morning with a friend of mine who I consider far left, and he would tell you he is far left.
Okay.
And I asked him, if you get to pick, and you have no other choice but Trump or DeSantis, who would you pick? And after a pause, he said, I guess I would take Trump, because while Trump is an idiot, and this is paraphrasing his words.
Right.
While Trump is an idiot, he's not a complete jerk. And that's very paraphrased, far more colorful. And I like to consider myself independent. I definitely lean left. I don't try to hide that. I'm the same way. I would definitely want neither of these guys to be president. But if someone said, Hal Stewart, it's up to you, and you have to choose Trump or DeSantis, I would choose Trump for some of the similar reasons. I don't want a president that is just going to get mired in the social issues or responding to right-wing media. Like, he just banned gain of function research, which I know why he did it. It's because there was controversy with gain of function research in the COVID the COVID virus, COVID-19, but gain of function research actually serves a very useful purpose. So to just ban it because it's that's just a soundbite. That's all he's doing is attacking a soundbite. I don't know that I want a president like that. I don't know that I want a president who's going to retaliate against a corporation or a business because they didn't like his policies. That's just how it works. Not everybody's going to like him. So as an independent, I would definitely, who does not like Trump or DeSantis as candidates, I would choose Trump. And then again, my far left friend would choose Trump as well. And I would guess that's probably, I don't know this, but I would think that's probably across the board.
That's interesting. That's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't think a lot of people are talking about that Trump is he's the known evil from the left perspective. He's the known evil. You know what you're dealing with. And from the left's point of view, at least sometimes he gets it right from their point of view. I find that interesting. And you know what? It's a refreshing point of view. And
I'd be curious to find out like a greater poll just to see what would happen. I think, too, people look at Trump and, even those that hate him can look at like the animal cruelty bill, things like that he's not the prison reform bill. There is a spark of reason within him. Sometimes I think he's motivated by ego and impulse, but there is this spark of where he can say, you know what, this is a good idea. Let me sign this bill. This doesn't play to the base. This isn't going to get me anything special, but this is the right thing to do.
Yeah. When he thinks he's right, he doesn't care if it's popular.
Nope, not in the least. No. I'll let you go now. Let's see if we can get somebody else to call in and hear what they have to say.
Well, I thank you for calling in, Hal. I do always appreciate hearing your questions and your comments, so I do thank you for giving a call in.
Yeah. We'll talk to you again.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks. So you've heard Jason. You've heard Hal. So we've had an independent. We've heard someone on the right. I don't know that we'll necessarily hear someone who's on the left calling into the program, although I'm happy to hear their point of view as well. But Graham, the phone is free. Don't let it sit too long. Someone else may call in. And again, this is open to anyone in the world. So I'm happy to hear people. And I know we have an audience in the United Kingdom, in Sweden. We have people who listen to the program in Peru, in Canada, people who listen to the program out in India, Japan. Well, hello, and thank you for calling in. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I'm your host, Michael. And may I ask, what is your first name?
Hey, what's up, Michael? It's Graham. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect. No problem.
All right. I can actually count as a person from the left calling in, talking to you about Trump. I mean, before Trump ran for president, I volunteered for Democrats.
Okay.
In 2016, I volunteered for Bernie Sanders, and then I migrated. And then when the primary was over, I migrated over to the East Coast, volunteered for a congressional candidate down in Florida, and then a congressional candidate in New York.
Okay. So you have some left-wing credentials there. So tell me, when you're looking at, and again, to start off, it's looking at the top 5 candidates, the ones that really have, it seems to have some kind of staying power or importance. Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, we have obviously DeSantis, and we have Trump. Looking at that lineup, who is it that's catching your attention at this moment? Who do you think has the legs?
Sorry, so say that last part again.
Yeah, who do you think has the legs? Who has the staying power?
No, I mean, I think the Trump victory is inevitable. Of course, asterisk unless they succeed in assassinating him, which is terrible to say, but I mean it's a reality. I mean even the Russian arms dealer was
Victor Bout.
Yeah, he talked about it. So it's a dark reality that we have to be realistic about. I think DeSantis is a good governor. I'm not very familiar with Tim Scott, although I've looked at him briefly. He seems like a very skilled legislator, which that might be a very valuable asset to have. I think there have definitely been cases where a very strong presidency, a strong administration, consists of an executive and a legislator. That was definitely the case with Trump's first term. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Mike Pence came from a legislative background.
He did,
and technically, DeSantis has legislative experience too. Yeah, I mean, I think DeSantis would be better off finishing his term as governor before he seriously ran for the presidency. But I don't discourage him from running this time around. I think it's good for him and Trump to have the ideological and the political philosophical debate, and to also see who the candidates are during moments of pressure, because there's even a lot of people now talking about like how DeSantis is too captured by his political consultants. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, it's silly and it's like small, low vibrational issues that we're talking about here, but it's actually, if you look at it from a zoomed out larger picture perspective, like it can be pretty important. I mean, I think it's I think it's kind of a big deal if a candidate has his own positions and he can vigorously defend them versus somebody who was given their political positions by consultants and then they're constantly going to poll and kind of move with the winds of political opinion, which can be manipulated like really well, especially in today's age with mass media and the fact that AI is going to change all that too once it really starts developing.
Well, that's interesting. Do you think AI is going to have a big impact in 2024? If so, how?
Yeah. I can't say how. I can't say how yet because it's still too early, and I'm not. I'm definitely not a subject matter expert when it comes to it. I'm only keeping up with the conversations that people are having about it now. But if you think about the way that AI has been able to synthesize information, there's been a couple interviews where with the big AI developers, the heads of the projects, and they're saying that the potential for digesting information is going to increase exponentially, because from my very layperson's understanding of it, you can have an AI read through thousands of PhD papers, and instead of if a human knows how to use the AI tool correctly, effectively, instead of having to read every single one of those papers, and like let's say it takes I don't even know how accurate this is, but let's say it takes a day for a researcher to read through an entire like PhD like paper or thesis or even like a dissertation. Mm-hmm. If it takes them that much time to do it, like a day, and they have the AI do it, and instead of long sessions spent understanding where the author is coming from, instead you get like points on a map that the AI points you to, and you're able to put your the information that you're looking for together that much more quickly. It has the same. It has the same. I think it has the same potential to change political conversations where for people who don't want to spend a lot of time trying to pay attention to the way that the political landscape evolves day by day, week by week, and month by month. Instead, they can have an even more, I guess it would be like the equivalent of like the Soundbites. The way that the Soundbites used to change campaigns. I remember there was that one guy, Howard Dean, and he had a rockin' and rollin' campaign, and all of a sudden, he let slip the Howard Dean scream, and that was it. It was over. So the way that people digested news before that era and afterwards, I think it's going to be like that.
Okay. So you think that, and this has been said before, in 2016, 2015, it's been said in 2012 that the algorithms, like in Google, can already direct people, and so that could have an influence. In fact, there were several papers about 2012, 2008, how Google and search engines are manipulating election results because they direct people very specifically towards one point of view versus others. And you think that could be a factor. Am I understanding that right?
It's possible that there's quite a bit of overlap between what you just said and what I was talking about.
Okay, I understand. But we haven't. Do you believe that that the battle between DeSantis and Trump is too much of a distraction, and is that going to help someone else come up? And if you think so, who? Or do you think that's enough? Because we already heard just from Hal that some people who are middle of the road, they're so tuned out of it that they might want to pick someone completely different. What do you think?
I could be wrong, but I don't foresee anyone new coming along and gaining lots of popularity. At least on the center right to the right. On the left, it's a different story because you have Kennedy and Marianne Williamson.
I'm sorry, Williamson makes me laugh.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm not able to keep up with the opinions on the left. I'm not able to predict them that more than the people on the right, because the people on the right, I feel like whatever opinion they had of Trump, they at least paid attention to what he did during his first 4 years. Maybe they didn't vote for him, or maybe they didn't like him to begin with because they didn't have confidence in his ability to govern because he had never held previous government experience before. So and that includes me. In 2016, I voted third party. I preferred Trump over Clinton, absolutely. But coming from the left, my philosophy that year was I want to get the third party candidate to 5%. Of course, it didn't work, but but anyway, so I think people from the center right to the right watched what Trump did over his first 4-year terms, and I think that when the primaries arrive, everybody's going to make their own decision. But what I hope that people on the right, I hope that one mistake they don't make is not recognizing the opportunity there is with Trump to make conservative ideals more popular. Because I think up until, I think it was Jason who you were talking to earlier, and I only caught the last part of his conversation with you, but
yeah.
I think there are conservatives who say, oh well, if it's between Trump and DeSantis, well, I like DeSantis better, and so therefore I would vote for DeSantis. I think that's a mistake. I think even if you like the policies of DeSantis more than Trump, I think it's still a mistake to vote for DeSantis over Trump at this time period.
Because
now, if it was for 2024, I mean, if something happens and if it's like Trump's 4 years older in 2028 and then it's 2028 DeSantis versus Trump, I think that's different. But right now, I think that if you're somebody who likes DeSantis's positions more than Trump's, I think it's more worth it to support Trump and to lobby him and his administration for DeSantis-esque policies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're saying that because of the strength of Trump, the popularity, the apparent, excuse me, the apparent current momentum behind him, it's better for DeSantis to hold back and try and influence Trump to push his agenda, his political, legislative ideas, and get Trump to run with that, rather than to dilute Trump by voting for DeSantis and taking away some of the momentum of Trump, because you're just not going to be effective. Am I understanding that right?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, even just the regional differences too. I mean, like Trump was president for 4 years, and like by the time voting comes around, everybody should know what really happened during Trump's term, and especially during the campaign. And as Jason was mentioning earlier, in terms of all the forces that lined up against Trump, the other aspect too is like, if look at what they did to Trump. Like, you think that they won't also do that to a guy like DeSantis? And DeSantis doesn't have the experience that Trump has. He doesn't have the experience at the national level, and the experience fighting the deep state. So, I mean, I think DeSantis is a good governor, and I think he has good policies, but it's too early. I think it's too early for DeSantis to ascend to the national level. I think he does a good job of representing the people who he governs. I mean, I think it was maybe Howell or somebody who was mentioning that, like, oh, he's coming out and banning this or that every other week.
Yeah.
I will admit I'm not keeping up with that too much because I'm not in Florida yet.
Right.
But it seems to me that he's representing his constituency. It seems to me that the people of Florida want to make sure that they don't allow certain ideologies and certain interest groups to gain a foothold in their state, because there's quite a few people across the country right now who they don't have a tolerance for it, especially when it comes to children. They draw that line in the sand there, and they say, no, we don't want any of this, around our children.
Absolutely.
Under any circumstance.
I mean, that's the Target boycott we see right now. That's $9 billion. We've seen that with Disney, and that's worth 50% of their market value in terms of their stock price. And we see that in billions of dollars for Disney. We've seen that for Bud Light, which has lost tens of billions, and they're continuing to crash. So, yeah, there's definitely, DeSantis is not alone in the view that he's been pushing out there. But you don't think that'll be enough. Okay. Let me ask you, do you think of the other people outside of Trump, outside of DeSantis, is there another person, either the ones I've mentioned or any others, that you think could fit the bill?
So you're asking, aside from Trump or DeSantis, are there any other candidates running for president that are interesting? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I think it's way too early to tell what is going to happen with Kennedy, because he's on the other side of the field, and just like we saw in the 2020 campaign, before a certain debate where I think it was like right afterwards, like 4 candidates from the field just like exited the race and then endorsed Biden. 2 of those were Klobuchar and Buttigieg, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, looking back, it was obvious that was coordinated. I mean, some people say it was Obama that called them up and said, "Hey, this is your time now. You know, if you want favor from the Biden administration, this is what you got to do now." I think that's been well documented and not even.
No, there was a lot of phone calls. Same thing in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, and 2008 with Hillary and Obama and Charlie Rangel and a few others got in touch with her and said, "You're out. Just make the deal." We saw the same thing when we saw Hillary was able to run, and they basically bought off Senator Sanders. Bernie Sanders was basically bought out of that race to step out of the way. Democrats do that a lot. There's a lot of internal, behind the scenes. You're close, but it's not going to be you. Step out of the way. So we see that all the time.
Yeah, so that's what I mean in terms of we could very much see that happen again on the left, where Biden's going to say, "No, I'm not." They're going to debate, and his spokespeople are going to say, "No, Biden's the sitting president. He doesn't have to debate." But nobody knows what's going to happen between now and next fall. True. I mean, Biden could be impeached and not removed. It's unlikely, but he could be impeached and removed. Well, we'll see what happens with that. His favorability, his popularity could fall. Something could happen with all the stuff that's coming out.
Yeah, he could trip up.
And then all of us.
He could trip Colin going upstairs. He could have Hunter Biden take him down because of the influence peddling. Yeah, there's a lot of variables. Understood.
Right. So that's all I'm saying. Like, I just don't think Democrats have real primaries anymore. Ever since what we saw in both 2016 and in 2020, I think that politics on the Democrat side are much more orchestrated than they are on the right. So I do think. So that's why I include both Kennedy and Williamson. I know that a lot of people don't take Williamson seriously.
Nope, not at all.
But the thing is that she in 2016 she and Bernie Sanders decided to join with the establishment.
Yeah, but Williamson, honestly, I followed that very closely. Williamson had no chance. She was better. She had more support than Kamala Harris, absolutely. But I think Williamson topped out at about 11 or 12%. She never got above that. And personally, I find her to be a joke. I don't see her being realistic. Now, currently, based on the most recent, again, going by Real Clear Politics, Biden is leading by 40 points over Kennedy, or 42 points. He's got 42 points in the lead. We're seeing Kennedy at about 20 on the Democratic side. So it's about 20 to 40%, depending on which one you're looking at. He's crushing. And the most recent average, according to Real Clear Politics, shows Kennedy at about 16.8, with Biden with 59.3. Again, that's today. There's only 4 of them out there. Who knows what happens? So it's crazy.
So I don't see Williamson being more popular than Kennedy, but what I'm saying is like she's part of the team, the big team on the left, and so she has she definitely has potential to be influential, just like all the other candidates that were not going to be the nominee back in the 2020 race.
True. No, I don't doubt. There is a lot of politicking behind the scenes. Absolutely. But I find it interesting. Again, these are conversations no one really takes the time to actually ask. So that's why I'm asking, because no one actually asked the public these kind of questions and let people just say what they think. And I think it's important because I guarantee you, you're not the only one thinking the way you're thinking right now, Graham. There are a lot of people who are doing that. Same thing with Hal, same thing with Mike Bowie, same thing with Jason. There are people who have a lot of nuances in there. We should hear them. We should hear those nuances so we can better make a decision and say, okay, maybe there's something more I should pay attention to. Maybe people should be paying attention to Marianne Williamson more. I think she's a joke. I could be completely wrong. Maybe she's really brilliant. Haven't seen it, but it could be. Maybe it's Kennedy. Maybe he blows it out the water once he actually gets to be heard. Maybe it's Vivek Ramaswamy or Tim Scott. Maybe it's Nikki Haley. I don't know. Maybe we should be paying more attention to those people. But if we don't start doing it now, we'll never have the chance to do it later. So that's part of the reason why I'm asking right now. So people say, pay attention to all of them now. Pay attention to more of it. There may be more out there that we need to hear. And if we don't give them the chance now, you're not going to get that opportunity. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'll just, I guess maybe I'll just conclude with this.
Sure.
I hope that this time around, the American people pay attention to the presidential race, which includes the primary. I hope that they pay attention more this cycle than they did last cycle. And I hope that that trend continues over time, that everyone pays attention at least just a little bit more than they did last cycle, because we do need to be better citizens going forward. Because, I mean, as other people have mentioned, the stakes are higher and higher. I mean, we're a rapidly globalizing world. The internet and information communication is going to skyrocket more than it ever has before. And if we still want to be these leaders of the free world, well, we can't do that if we're burying our heads in the sand and saying, no, it's too painful, it's too difficult, it's too inconvenient to spend time out of my day to pay attention to who I have to choose from in terms of my leadership and what policies they are talking about. And when it comes to people who have political values that align more on the right, I would say I think it was the Heritage Foundation. I hope I'm not wrong about this. It was a very big institution on the right. I think they graded Trump's first term in office, and they said that he passed more conservative policies than any other president before him, including Ronald Reagan. Because up until that point, Ronald Reagan was like the best. It was like number one for them in terms of like the amount of conservative policies that he passed. And Donald Trump according to them, Donald Trump was even better than Ronald Reagan. So that's for people on the right. And then for people on the left, I would just encourage them to actually look at Trump's policies. I think he came out with a video recently about homelessness and how to combat the homeless problem. And I mean, it's a short video. It's like a two and a half minute video or something like that. And I was impressed. I thought that it was an idea that was long overdue. that we've had a homeless problem for a very long time, and they need to be. I mean, it's kind of a crude way to say it, but you have to offer people both the carrot and the stick.
No, it's
you
not
have to
crude.
say to them like, right? Well, you have to say to them like, you can't stay here because it's not sanitary, and there's nowhere for you to go to the bathroom, and we can't be lining the streets with porta potties. It's just not. It's not going to work. And porta potties smell really bad.
Yes.
And the thing is like they need to be offered transportation to places where there is infrastructure to house them and to offer them healing and therapeutic services and job training and nutrition. I mean, homeless people are not going to be able to just go. The vast majority of them, I would say, are not going to be able to just like jump up and like go right back into the workforce. That they've been
depending on how long you've been
well,
out there. Yeah.
I would say the vast majority. I could be wrong on that, but I would say the vast majority of homeless people are not will need time to transition towards being able to enter the labor market, like being both willing and able. Like when you've been sick for a long time, you're not, even if you're willing, you're not able.
Well, from my experience and from the data that I've seen, and I may be out of date on this, the majority of people who are homeless are short-term homeless. By short-term, I mean 2 years or less.
Okay.
And so transition back out of that, actually, the shorter the time you've been homeless, the easier it is to transition back out of it. There is a large number of people who are homeless long-term. Most of those people who are long-term homeless have mental issues, not just economic ones. But you are correct. The longer you're homeless, the harder it is to reintegrate back into society. But there is a substantial portion of homeless who are short-term, 2 years or less, that have been out of the workforce. So it's there's a lot of nuance to that. It's a very big issue. And it really isn't being addressed. You're right.
Yeah, fair enough. And the last thing I'll say is that I hope we Americans, pay attention more and more to the activities of the deep state. I know that it's not easy to recognize right away, what are disingenuous attacks meant to sabotage someone's candidacy because they didn't go along with big power, big moneyed interests. It's not easy to recognize that stuff right away, but the longer you pay attention to the stuff, the more you're able to see it. And if we want to remain a free, independent, voting, sovereign people, we're going to need to be able to recognize corruption in real time, or else every candidate in the future is just going to be bought off, and if they don't comply, they're going to be sabotaged successfully, and we need to be able to recognize that going forward, so that way we can combat against it.
No, absolutely. I think you're right. I think that's a very unspoken, important question of corruption. How we need to, especially in light of the Durham file and the Durham report, we know corruption is affecting elections. Whether you like it or don't like it, whether you think it's a lot or a little, it's happening. We need to take that into account. And we need someone who we can trust isn't going to be at least largely affected by the corruption and do something to at least try to minimize it or hold it even and not increase. So that's very big. You make a great point there. And that's something that people need to have a conversation about. I think that's an important question. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yep, happy to.
All right. Thank you so much, Graham, for calling in and adding your thoughts on this. I love it. I love that people are calling in about this and having so many different, very interesting and important points about this, and also about your points about homelessness, which I think is I'm a big advocate on that, and so I'm glad you brought it up. I thank you about that.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll have a more fun and exciting primary as the process continues, and even for people who get exhausted by that stuff, hopefully they'll find some way to enjoy it all as well.
Absolutely, I hope so. Definitely. All right.
All right. Cool. Thanks. See you, Mike.
Thank you, Graham. So, folks, just like you've heard now from Graham, you've heard from Jason, you've seen some comments from Mike Bowie. We've had Hal, Jason, Mike Bowie, Graham. A few people have been calling in. I'm looking forward to it.